Hi everyone, it's Chris. From islands that are off limits to abandoned prisons, here are 8 of the most haunted places in the world. Number 8. Eastern State Penitentiary. Located in the legendary city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Eastern State Penitentiary was built in 1829. At one time, it was one of the most famous prisons in the world. This was largely because it was a very expensive construction, as well as the fact that it held legendary criminals like Al Capone and Slick Willie at one time. The penitentiary was known for its very strict rules. For example, all prisoners were kept in solitary and not allowed to talk to one another. Now, I'm sure we can all assume that there were way more harsh things going on, but I don't want this to get too dark. Transporting prisoners even required putting a bag over their heads so they couldn't see or do anything risky. This place was seriously scary. But when 1913 hit and overcrowding set in, the penitentiary's days were numbered, and now it's abandoned. Or at least it's mostly abandoned by the living anyways. For while there are tours that take people through the place, the penitentiary is now known for being a hotspot for paranormal activity. Footsteps, shadows that move and shouldn't be there, and even laughter have been heard in the place, and it's now considered one of the most haunted places in America. Number 7. Poveglia Island. Off the coast of Venice in the lagoon is an island called Poveglia. This island has a very tragic past. When the plague was ravaging Europe, people were desperate to try and get rid of those who had the disease, and they were willing to do anything to get rid of them. And in Venice, they had the idea to put all the people who had the plague onto Poveglia Island, then quarantine it to ensure that the non-infected wouldn't go there on accident. In certain ways, I guess this kind of made sense, but it was also condemning the people with the plague to certain death. From 1793 to 1814, more and more people were sent to the island in the name of health and safety, and many died there as a result. Estimates claim that over the course of those 20-plus years, over 160,000 people died on the island. They were all buried together to keep everyone sort of away from everyone else and safe from others. Then in 1922, a mental hospital opened on the island, and it was just as bad. It's said that a doctor would do horrible things to his patients there, and the hospital was finally shut down in 1968. And because of all these events, the island is believed to be haunted and cursed, to the extent that ghost hunters consistently try and go to the island in order to see if there are spirits wandering around. And if you do go there, do so at your own risk, as the island has been labeled off limits. Number 6. Paris Catacombs. In the 18th century, there was a crisis going on in Paris, France. Mainly, Paris had become so occupied with people that when they died, they were running out of places to put them. It was getting so bad that the cemeteries there were overflowing and even emitting a smell of rotten flesh. In 1780, a wall was burst because of a heavy rainstorm, and bodies were released from their holds. So the people of Paris needed to come up with an idea, and that idea was to put the bodies and remains in the tunnels underneath the city. There were loads of tunnels there, and there was plenty of room. For the next 12 years, 5 cemeteries worth of bodies and bones were put into the catacombs, and the world has never been the same since. It's believed that between 6 and 7 million bodies are within the catacombs, and each one of them has a story to tell. Not to mention, there are a few famous people buried there as well. Because of this interesting place, Paris later would open up the catacombs to the public for viewings, allowing them to see a small part of what was there. But only a small part, because who knows what else is down there. Many people feel that the catacombs are haunted and spooky in their own way, and it's believed that some of the bodies from cemeteries contain spirits that are unhappy with their new location. And this idea has persisted so much that many horror movies have been made about the catacombs. Number 5. Pripet. When I say the name Chernobyl, you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially now that HBO has done that limited-run series, which is apparently amazing. The Chernobyl disaster was the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the world so far, and the breakdown at the facility had long-standing effects, including completely abandoning the city of Pripet. As weird as it may sound, Pripet was actually a thriving town before the nuclear disaster. 50,000 people called this place their home, and they had a lot to enjoy in that home, including an amusement park. But when the Chernobyl reactor was destroyed, radiation spilled out into the atmosphere, and it irradiated the entire area around it, including Pripet. All 50,000 people were forced to leave everything behind. And to this day, and for many more days to come, everything is left exactly as it was when it was evacuated. Despite all the risk, many urban explorers have tried to go into the city, which is why now you'll get fined if you go unless it's with an authorized group. But even still, there are stories of what is in Pripet, including ghosts and phantoms of people who disappeared after the event. Number 4. Marlboro Psychiatric Hospital. Marlboro Psychiatric Hospital has a very sordid history, one that's made it both abandoned and haunted. This place ran for 67 years, and throughout that time, there were numerous mysterious reports about what really happened at the hospital in regard to its patients. Throughout the time, the hospital had numerous cases of patients disappearing, with no explanation as to where they went. As if that weren't creepy enough, the hospital also had multiple cases of patients dying under odd circumstances, including choking or freezing to death. This happened so often that a graveyard had to be commissioned to be made on site so that patients could be buried there. And this continued on for some time, even prompting an official investigation. But after a while, enough was enough, and the place closed down in 1988. This was when the ghost stories really started to emerge, for there were too many disappearances and sightings to make this a simple thing. Many have toured the place and searched for paranormal activity, and eventually the state of New Jersey tore down the place in 2015, bringing a potential end to a haunted place. Number 3. Winchester Mystery House. William Wirt Winchester is the creator of the legendary rifle that helped tame the Wild West, and to this day, it's a quality name in regard to guns. He became famous because of his guns and was very wealthy. His wife Sarah had a different view on things though, for in her mind, and according to a medium she met, she was going to be forever haunted by the people that her husband's guns had killed. And to protect herself, she made a very large mansion, one that had many different facets and hidden rooms that she could access in order to get away from the spirits and ghosts that were haunting her. But by the time the carpenters were done building the house, which did continue well after her death, it had over 200 rooms, 10,000 windows, and 2,000 doors of various sizes and for various intents, including ones that would allow the late Mrs. Winchester to spy on people if she needed to. Today, you can tour the Winchester house, and you can see for yourself the lengths that Sarah went to get away from the spirits and ghosts. She lived in the house alone, and some say that it is indeed still haunted by the victims of the family gun, which, if you know history, is a number that is in the millions without even breaking a sweat. Number 2. Isla de la Muñeca. The infamous Island of the Dolls is regarded as one of the most haunted places in the world today, largely in part to the legend that surrounds it. The story goes that there was once a caretaker for the island, and one day he found a girl's body floating right outside the canal of the island. And not after he buried her, he felt that he was actually being haunted by the girl. Desperate to bring peace to her spirit, he started making and collecting dolls. His collection grew, and now they're everywhere. Hanging from trees, sticking from posts, he put them all over the island. And you're probably asking why. Well, he wanted her to have something to play with and thus leave him alone. But apparently it didn't work very well, as it said the caretaker died in the very same canal where he had found the girl. And that's if he found a girl at all. Some people say it was actually a doll he found floating in the water that haunted him the whole time. Ever since then, reports about the island and its haunted nature have emerged. Mainly, people keep claiming that the dolls strewn across the island are moving. Whether it be their eyes or their heads, they swear they're alive. Number 1. Alcatraz. Alcatraz is one of the most famous haunted places in the world, and most definitely one of the most famous American buildings ever made. Resting on an island just off the coast of San Francisco, Alcatraz was built from the ground up to be one of the most secure prisons around. The United States wanted this prison to be one that no one could escape from, and that the hardest and toughest criminals around would feel really trapped. And to this day, no confirmed escape attempts survived the waters of the bay, although there are some stories out there. And over the course of 30 years, Alcatraz held some of the worst before it got shut down. So why was it shut down then? It was actually starting to crumble, and new types of prisons were being built to help with the load that Alcatraz was carrying. And part of that load was apparently ghosts. There have been many sightings and reports of odd noises coming from Alcatraz. Some people have seen apparitions of people who clearly aren't there. Some people have heard noises coming from cells even though they're completely empty. Moans, crying, screams, and even the sound of Al Capone's banjo, which is a proven fact that he had one in Alcatraz. That's all been heard and seen there. So though the place is long since shut down and abandoned, that doesn't mean it's not still kinda occupied. And that's super creepy. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these haunted and abandoned places? Do you think that some of them are truly haunted, or is this just a case of people thinking it's haunted? Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time on World List.